Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. We have a race under our belt, and I can't tell if it's any different than last year. Welcome, everybody. How you doing, Rob?
It is. It's massively different, and despite the fact that the race was somewhat boring, I have a huge tidal wave of optimism to let you know
Really?
why. It shows how the pack has closed down Max massively, and that will be coming later. So I don't know what
Wait,
the
let me
audio.
understand if I have this right. I
Yep.
am the pessimist here who spent the
Yes.
last 24 hours trying to figure out how we could become America's leading pickleball podcast, while
Correct.
you are the optimist of the group today.
Correct. And
Oh,
you're
this
going
would
to
be
love the
good.
stat that you're going to love the stat. And I don't know what the audio version of clickbait is, but I've just basically done that because you're going to have to listen now to the
Stick
rest of the episode to stick
around.
around. So let's hit news and social. Quite a lot kind of happened in the news this week. Some
Oh
of it
boy.
not so great.
Oh boy.
We'll hit that. Video Vault is a bumper edition because I was bored in a hotel room in Niagara, so I actually watched some stuff. So it's a bumper version of videos, I think. Then we'll probably just summarize the race quite quickly because there
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of action, and we'll
Nope.
actually do kind of more of a first day of school report of each of the teams and kind of pick the bones out of each team. Would they be happy? Did they overperform, underperform, whatever? Pitlane Paul, first race review of the
Pitlane
season,
Paul.
king of the pits, um,
Some stats and some
the
fantasy.
pits, yes, and a preview of Saudi. That's what we've got. So let's get
Love it.
cracking. Let's
Neither
get this
one
one
of
out of
us
the way,
want to
shall we?
talk about this one. We've been trying to avoid this because it's like it was a tabloid story, the Horner thing, the Christian Horner stories, and with no resolution, we kind of acknowledged it existed and moved on. We were trying to be, as fans, we're not journalists. It's not really neither one of us cared. We just wanted it to be taken care of, and if there was a victim, for them to be done right and for the justice to be served. And so this week he was, the charges the allegations were cleared or dismissed or whatever the language is. Red Bull said keep on keeping on, and then we're like, all right, so nothing burger, let's move on. And again, hope there wasn't something they're covering up, but who knows? We don't, so let's just move on. And then somebody found the email button, and on Thursday emailed the entire paddock, all the journalists, team principals, everybody, supposedly a drive of the evidence of the texts, the
Yeah.
chats, the
The whole G
pictures.
drive of WhatsApps and pictures and
Crazy.
everything. And when it first dropped, we kind of both looked at it and we were like, is this real? I mean, some of the things just seemed too random.
Too random.
And it's like, I'm not sure. Then you made a good point, like the volume of it. If somebody has faked this, that they've gone
They
to some
spent a
serious
lot of
effort.
time. Right. They've been working on this for months if they faked this. I mean, this was not like, if there were like five of them, like, oh yeah, maybe they, created the contact in their phone named Christian Horner and they sent some notes to that fake person back and forth, and fine. This is not that. The volume is just stunning, and apparently there's pictures which, thank God, I have not seen and do not want to see. I hear they're not flattering. We're a family pod. We're going to leave it at that. But just, it was like, and Rob and I were kind of talking about, well, I guess we got to acknowledge this leak, and then we'll leave it at that until yesterday, when Jos Verstappen waded in full thrust, full forward in on this. And now at this point, we have to talk about it because it's Max's dad, and he's always around. And Max said, and at first it was motorsport.com through De Telegraph in the Netherlands. I'm like, is this real? And then now it's on the BBC Sport website. I'm like, oh God, it's got to be real. It cannot continue this way, said former F1 driver Jos Verstappen. The situation is not good for the team and is driving people apart. Verstappen also denied that he was the source of the leaks. So it even got to the part where there's thinking Jos is out there spamming the paddock with Christian Horndog info.
And even if you don't like him, he's got a very sordid past, old Yoss. He then came out and said something which I completely agree with. Like he's like, why would I? Max is under contract with these guys until
Exactly.
2028. Why would I launch a S bomb into the media? So I can't believe it isn't him.
And he said, Max is performing great. The team's performing great. He feels at home here. I have no interest in doing that at all, end quote. But then he made similar comments to the Daily Mail, saying Red Bull would explode if Horner remains in his position. And Jos, who, by the way, is, as you said, a sordid past. Maybe we don't go into Yos's past because
Yeah, maybe we leave it. If you
enough.
want to know about Yoss's
Just
background,
do a
there's plenty of
Google.
stuff
It's
out there.
horrible. It is not good, the things he has done And there's no
But I don't
way.
think they have any bearing on this.
Correct. He's
Yeah.
a piece of garbage, and so I'm being polite. And if the piece of garbage is now saying that Christian Horner is playing the victim when he is the one causing the problems, Christian Horner's got a real problem here. I mean, like, and I think we've all agreed, right? If these were real, and again, we don't know. We're not trying to say they are or not, but if they're real, he has to go. Like, that is a hostile work environment if that's a person who works for him. So anyway, we'll see what happens. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I feel like I have to take another shower already from talking about this, and I'm done with Yas, and I'm done with Christian, and just let's talk about racing. Is that cool, Rob?
Yeah, let's move on. This bit I kind of started putting some notes together, but actually it didn't come to fruition over the race weekend, so we can probably move on, which is just that they'd spent a lot of time trying to correct the issues with the concrete and the manhole covers and all that kind of stuff. But they did, and we didn't see it raise its head for the complete race weekend, so probably didn't really need to worry about that. But one big addition that you picked up here, Brian, I'll let you cover it. The major addition to the Bahrain Grand Prix
was the checkered flag waiver of one Jeremy Clarkson, who waved the best checkered flag in the world.
While very, very drunk. I mean,
yes.
that conversation with Brundle on the grid, as soon as he started talking, I was like, oh dear, how many times have we been sipping a beer here, Mr. Clarkson? Because I was wondering where it was going to go. And also, almost Brundle was kind of, I think, once his first sentence, you could tell was a little bit loose. You were like, oh my word, are we going to get like an F-bomb or something dropped on TV here? And Brundle's trying to back away, and Clarkson keeps going. It's awesome.
It was awesome. And then actually a random person on Twitter said Clarkson's been having some beers. And Clarkson responded. He goes, "You're darn right I have." To some rando. I don't know how he even found that this person said that. But it was great to see Jeremy there. And then, we talked a lot about Drive to Survive and how we really enjoyed this season of Drive to Survive. We talked about that a bit. But Rob, you have some notes on what actually came about with Drive to Survive Season 6.
Yeah, I wonder if people have, like, we wanted to throw ourselves into it and watch it because, with Gluttons for Punishment, if it was going to be the same sort of over dramatic stuff as last time, but we also want to be able to kind of communicate it on the pod. So we were always going to watch it. Sounds like a lot of people have not even bothered because they're basically saying it's going to be the same old fakery. So audiences are down massively. You got 30% year-on-year decrease for season 6.
Wow.
The series attracted an average viewership of only 2.9 million its first 3 days, representing a substantial decrease from previous season. 18% reduction in total hours viewed over the first weekend, which amounted to 21.8 million hours, down from 25. So what? 25.6, basically 4 million hours down from the previous season. So a lot of people didn't bother turning up. Then the people that did, I think this is going to get filed under, for me, haters gonna hate.
Right.
Because some of this is okay, right. They don't like the exaggerated sound effects to amplify crash noises and creative editing of commentators' remarks to fit the narrative. Well, okay, I mean, but if you wanted to find the particular bit of commentary that went with the action you're going to show in, you can't watch an hour of a race on Drive to Survive, right? They have to kind of pull these pieces together. As long as it is a kind of commentary that does go with the event, I'm okay with that.
I am too.
People didn't like the Lewis Hamilton with Toto conversation about his contract. Because apparently it was reenacted for the Netflix audience. So it had taken place, which I was sitting there watching it thinking, this is probably a refilm of it, because I doubt Netflix were allowed into the actual contract conversation, right? But they've kind of turned around and said, it would be cool if we could get an idea of what goes on in those types of conversations. So they've filmed a rerun. I'm not really that worried about that.
I don't care about it. It's the same people. It would be different if they went on the screen and said, this is a reenactment, and Toto Wolff was played by Connor Moore, and Lewis Hamilton was played by Connor Moore. Then I'd have a problem with it. But this were the actual people, and they represented what the conversation was like.
Exactly. It'll probably drop the sensitive bits that they can't say.
Right.
So either you just have nothing and just don't touch it, or you do this, and I'm fine with it. And the last one, which I really think goes under haters gonna hate, is that people said, oh, the Formula 2 grid was shown from overhead as they swooped in for the shot of the British Grand Prix. So it was still Silverstone. Who cares if that was the the F2 cars? I really don't care at all.
I don't either.
It didn't spoil my enjoyment that I sat there in a rage for the rest of the episode saying, well, I can't bring myself to watch the rest of this episode. Those were the F2 cars, clearly. So, yeah.
I thought it was an excellent season. Like we talked about,
here.
It was back to the first couple years of it, 1, 2, and maybe 3, where it was really pretty good. This was a great season. And Relatedly, though, on top of those viewership numbers, Vincenzo Landino, friend of the pod, had a good review of the latest F1 financial figures. Revenue increased 25% to 3.2 billion. Revenue sources were media rights, and these are in US dollars. Media rights 1.04 billion, race promotion 944 million dollars. So all of those lucrative deals that we're getting through the Middle East and Vegas and other places, they're paying the bills, and that's why, as we talked about, we race for money. That's why Barcelona's coming off. We're going to a Madrid street circuit because of these numbers. Sponsorship, 579 million. Total attendance rose 5%. However, I think we all know that viewership and some of the newer fans' viewership is what drives this in future years. Global TV viewership fell 2.5% to 1.5 billion. So, to Rob's point on Drive to Survive, I think we're probably seeing, the retraction of some of the newer fans with Max's dominance, with maybe we'll see what happens this season, but some of those fans may be the casual fan, I'll call them, because they could be longtime fans that are just casual fans. We may see them decrease a little, given some of the dominance, given some of the storylines, given some of the lack of change. I still love F1, even if I wanted to make a pickleball podcast this week because of Bahrain. But we'll talk about that in a second. So, Rob, do you agree that maybe these viewership numbers are the leading indicator, and then the revenue numbers are sort of the lagging indicator, where we'll see that maybe kind of decrease or at least slow down a little in future years?
I think, and this is no disrespect to anybody that wants to watch a sport, but because you'll always find this, people that come in and find the sport, especially if you found it through Drive to Survive and COVID, and were maybe given an impression of the drama from Drive to Survive of what you can expect on track, and then what you see is Max run off into the distance and win it easily. If you're into a sport and you're all about the fight for the front, it's going to be a real tough sell to keep those eyeballs on the sport. And I don't begrudge anybody for kind of going,
I don't either.
Same dude won again. I'm going to go and watch something else where I actually have some kind of jeopardy at the front. Now, people like me and you that followed it for a gazillion years, we're able to, and it doesn't make us any better fans, but we're just we can kind of turn a blind eye because we've seen multiple phases of domination where we go, okay, fine, that thing, that car, that driver's going to win. I'm going to focus on everything else that's going on.
Exactly. That's exactly right. The second part, it's I'm all right focusing on the battle for second and who's king of the midfield and kind of understanding development through the year. I'm fine. Like that still excites me. But I hold no grudge against anybody, a casual fan who turns it off. So I'll be back in a little bit. Like, because we've always welcomed, we've always welcomed fans in under the tent of F1 fandom because there's enough room for all of us, for diehards to casual. It's all cool. Do your thing. All right.
I think that's news and social. Let's whip open. Well, you can't really whip open. Let's slowly grate the door open.
Well, because you have so many videos that you added, this thing's gonna. I gotta wait for this to fully open because we gotta squeeze them all out of the vault, into the vault. Which direction do the videos go into the vault? You go first because we both have the first one, and I loved it.
Yes. Okay. So I'd seen a short of it, I think, and then I came across the full length on YouTube. So it's world's fastest camera drone versus an F1 car featuring Max Verstappen, which is a little unfair because it should be featuring Max Verstappen and Liam Lawson.
I agree.
Red Bull channel. So not even the Red Bull Racing, but the full Red Bull channel.
Full Red Bull channel.
12 minutes long. Did not feel like 12 minutes long. I could watch this drone chase the F1 car around over and over again. I love the fail, try again element of it at the beginning where they're trying to hone the drone. Nice little bit of rhyming there. And I don't know which one I loved the most, the dry with Liam or the wet with Max. I mean, the wet with the vortices of the water spraying off was great, but Liam was going quicker, so that was like more, I don't know, just loved it.
I loved it as well. I preferred the dry personally because you really got a feel for the way he came out of the corners and like you were closer because they couldn't get too close to the spray. I loved it. I love the whole thing. I agree with everything you said.
And the next one is I was kind of hearing all these kind of stories break about, one of the reasons Lewis has gone to Ferrari is that year they wouldn't give him a longer term deal because they don't want to give up Kimi Antonelli. They don't want to make the mistake of what they did with Max Verstappen. Apparently, he would have been a Mercedes driver, but they didn't get their ducks in a row in the right in time, and he ends up going to Red Bull. And the rest, as they say, is history. So I'm like, well, who is this kid? So I kind of went trying to find a few videos about him. Why Kimi Antonelli is the next big thing. Josh Revel channel, 14 minutes. You probably get it after about 5, and then I would just bail because nothing else happens after that. It's 14 minutes long, and it just doesn't need the final 9. It is cool watching who he is, how he came up through karting, where he is now, and then they somehow managed to extend it to last 14 minutes. So I would bail after about the first 4 or 5.
Okay, good to know. I didn't watch it, and you know what? I won't.
Yeah, just watch
This
the
is
first
what we
4,
do.
and then you
This
know
is
who he is, right?
This is what our
Um,
service that we provide.
and then the last one, which I did find funny, which is Drive to Survive season 6, but only the memes. Nav F1 channel, 9 minutes of just all of the meme-worthy moments of season 6. So if you want to be in on all the in jokes about the memes that happen, but you don't want to sit through season 6, then what are you trying to show me on?
Is this one
Okay.
of them? It's James Vowles. I don't put any caffeine in my body until Sunday. Did that
That was
make the
probably
memes?
in there. I think so. Yeah, I mean, literally had everything. It's got
I didn't see it.
Gunther fishing. It had Toto and Fred talking about how he looks slimmer in red. I mean, anything that you can imagine from the 6 seasons is in 9 minutes. So really isn't too much to sit through to watch get all
I'm
the
gonna go
memes.
check it out. I'm gonna go check it out.
And then it's over to you for your videos.
Yeah, I got some good, bad, and ugly. Here we go. Lando, George, and Alex go karting again after 5 years. This came out yesterday, Saturday. We're recording the pod a day after the race, as we normally do on Sundays. Sky Sports F1 channel, 5.5 minutes. This is must watch. They did this 5 years ago when they were rookies, and they showed them today doing a karting race, the 3 of them, and they goofed around, and it was a lot of fun. The hijinks to win, Lando started. I'm not gonna say what he did, and then Alex tried to top it. And in the way that like nice people like Alex try to do something a little bit aggressive, and it usually backfires because they're not good at cheating. Like you kind of get the feel like he's a good dude and like wouldn't do this normally, but he's trying to be funny, and it almost goes horribly wrong. You have to watch.
Didn't they preview most of this in the build up to the race? Or
I
did you not
didn't see
tune
the
in?
build up to the race because I was
Okay. So
out
yeah,
of.
I haven't seen this, but I watched a big chunk of the race. They did show it in the build up. So
Yeah, I had to
guess
watch the
full
race on a
version's
big delay, so I was out driving people around in the morning. Okay, meet the 2024 Formula One drivers on the F1 channel, 13 minutes. It's just basically like fun questions for them, and an interesting way to get to know them. I totally recommend that. I wanted to like this. Charles Leclerc steers and Carlos Sainz does the brakes and the gas. It's the Bahrain Grand Prix preview on the Ferrari channel proper, not their F1 channel. It's 90 seconds, which was very quick. It's kind of fun, but it's too fast. And so Charles driving a simulator and with his steering, and Carlos is doing the pedals. And it's funny for like a couple seconds, and then it's over. So if you skip it, I already gave it more time than it's worth, 90 seconds. There's my 90 seconds. The Haas AAA Pass preseason 2024. It's almost 4 minutes on the Haas F1 channel. Please skip this. Seriously, I watched it so you don't have to. It's been a week. It's been up 3,000 views, and I think 3 of them were me when I was sleeping. So feel free to skip that one, but we're going to end on a high. 10 things Formula One driver George Russell, let me say his name properly, George Russell, can't live without. 10 essentials on the British GQ channel. I mean, I find the best stuff. When you think of people who go to lengths, do I regularly watch the British GQ channel? Well, that's between me, you, and my YouTube account. 8 minutes long. It is a good one. It's fun. Like, you can see the travel that an F1 driver has to deal with and how George handles some of this travel. What does he bring with him? I loved it. It was 8 minutes. I recommend it. We are ending that on a high, and we're going to close the video vote because we had a race this week.
Hey, right. Race weekend at weird days and times, which really messed with my mind. Didn't get to watch a lot of practice live. I really didn't kind of tune in properly until FP3. Really, all I'm going to say from practice is the only real nailed on things. At this point, I would say that through practice, Red Bull didn't look dominant. They looked fast, but they didn't look dominant. The only real big thing was Alpine suck.
They looked bad.
So unless you've got any practice insights, Brian, I suggest we move to quali.
Let's do it. Let's go to quali. Q1, we lost the Gas Man and Esteban, as we already talked about Alpine. They were the bottom of the barrel. But by the way, can I just really fast? Drive to Survive. There were 2 Alpine editions. Cover your ears if you haven't watched. Spoilers for 30 seconds. Bruno Famine came across terribly. They made him out to be just the behind the scenes, leave me alone. I don't like talking to people, but I'm going to shiv Otmar in the back and make sure we get rid of him, and then I'm going to take over. Even though I don't think he wanted to take over. I mean, is that he came across horribly in this? Yes,
He did, yeah.
so I
Alpine
was.
came across horribly, actually.
They did. I was reveling in this for Bruno, who I did not like because I like Otmar a lot. So, anyway, back to normal scheduled programming. In addition to the Alpines, we lost the Saubers and Logan Sargent. And then we go to Q2. We lost Kevin Magnussen, and then here's where the pain comes in. We lost both RBs. Oh boy, we lost
More to follow on that shortly.
Lance Stroll, and we lost the other Williams in Alex Albon. So we had.
And I would say though,
as
we do. And moving on into Q3, actually, they did flash up a graphic which I really should have captured, and someone can let us know what the gaps were. But the almost Alpines aside, the range of time across the people that dropped out in Q1. This isn't like Bottas and Joe and Sargent were kind of miles off the pace. You were literally like one little overcorrection where you caught the steering. That was it. You were probably out of qualifying because the pack seems to have really got closer than it even was last year. I mean, it's getting a bit crazy now in terms of just how close. I mean, as we look at Q3, Hamilton being down in ninth, didn't maybe hook up an amazing lap, but didn't do anything massively wrong. And I think was only about a couple of tenths, maybe 3 tenths back, was he at the end?
Yeah, not even.
Not even. So, like, literally, the top 10 was just insane. But now, not enough people have mentioned this, but I would say that yes, Max gets pole, great lap. However,
Charles'
Mr.
Q2
Piastri,
lap was faster. Oh no, okay, that's right.
Well, yeah, Charles's Q2 lap was faster, so it's like, Ferrari did have pace and they couldn't hook it up. But sometimes in sports, whichever sports you follow, your team will have all the things go your way, and you'll have a trouble-free weekend. And anything happens, you fall on your face and you fall onto I don't know, gold. It was probably hurt, but you'd be happy that you found, it just everything goes your way that could go your way. When Max got that toe off Piastri to absolutely catapult him down the straight to top speed, and only ends up taking pole by whatever it was it a tenth? 2 tenths?
Less than a tenth.
They were basically saying that toe is probably the difference. And it's like, really? So man.
If you go back, not that you have the time, but if anybody listening has a little time and is a little bored, watch the end, Max's final laps of Q2 and Q3. Here's why. He was brilliant. What he did was he would actually sit before the last corner, and he would wait for someone coming by on a flyer, and then quickly attach himself to them and cross the start-finish line at a much higher speed and follow them. And Oscar got out of the way, but in Q2, it was someone else dragged him a little further. Even so, like, he was smart. He knows that they may not have the same quali pace they've had before because they got it in race pace in spades in this car. But man,
have they? Wait till the optimism piece come in later, Brian.
I don't know what you're smoking over there, but all right.
I know. So really, quali closes out. Max pole again, but given the easy nature they cantered to a 1-2 last year in pole, no one really got close to them this year. It really could have gone either way. But like you say, clever driving by Max to get the toe is probably what
he did it twice.
What sealed it. But Charles, like you say, did it faster. The case was there if Charles could have just hooked it up because he was faster than Max. His pole time, which I don't know how often. Again, I don't know the stats there, but how often has a Q2 time been faster than the pole time?
I was shocked when I saw.
There's a challenge for the Dirty Siders to go and find out for us. So then we come to Saturday morning, which was strange. Which, by the way, just before we get into the race, just 5 minutes before lights out, I suddenly realised that checkout in the hotel I was staying in was 11 a.m. for me, which would have been half an hour before the race finished. So I ran downstairs, did the thing that I hate doing, because I'm not really very comfortable doing this. Excuse me, as a Diamond member, I automatically get late checkout, right? So she kind of looks at me and she's like, what room are you in? Yeah, this room. Yes, Mr. Vale, we can sort that. Yes. And then I go sprinting back off again. She must have wondered what the heck was going on. So I got up just as formation lap was almost coming to an end. So we have the start. Good getaway by everybody, really. We'll talk about what happened at the back of the pack in a second. But I just want to ask you this, Brian.
Yeah.
Did Charles just get caught in no man's land where, because he didn't get away brilliantly ahead, he was never going to challenge Max into the first corner. So rather than maybe ease off and like try to go for the switcheroo, or at least try to kind of come back in on the inside, he kind of dangled out on the outside, which allowed Max to just kind of not drive him off the track. It wasn't illegal what Max did. Max used all of his racing knowledge to just drift out, use a maximum amount of the track, leaving Charles to either choose to run off the track and probably lose 2 or 3 places, or slam on the brakes. And by slamming on the brakes, now we get a concertina effect. And suddenly Charles is kind of like the cork in the champagne bottle. No one else can really attack. And guess what? Max goes off to get to build that 1 second gap that he needs because now that DRS is going to be enabled after lap 1. So I just felt Charles shouldn't have left the car out where he left it. He should have just acknowledged he hadn't had a good start and just tucked in behind Max.
You remember some of those races last year when Max would have poor starts and make it interesting at the first corner, and it happened a lot in the beginning of the season. And then yeah, that didn't happen. I don't know. I don't know. What do you want me to say? Charles got a bad start. He had a bad race. That was a bad car. It's like I know what happened to you and me? We totally switched places. This is crazy.
Okay,
no,
so
I don't know what Charles would have done. But then what happened at the back? Can we talk about that?
Go for it.
Stroll goes for the corner, right? And at the first corner, it's a tight kind of hairpin corner, and he's on the inside, and people are giving him space, which was amazing because it was 2 or 3 wide at that part. And so he's kind of making it through the inside of the corner. And then Nico Hülkenberg came on a little hot and a little fast, and he was like, all right, I had a bad start. I had a good position on the grid, and Lance passed me, and I'm going to get some time back here. And he kind of went into the back of Stroll, not super hard, but hard enough to spin Stroll around and break his wing. And then Valtteri's behind that, and he's like, oh, there's a problem. And he ran into Hülkenberg a couple times as well. It looked like twice he ended up hitting him. And his front end plate was all broken because he showed up at the scene of an accident right in front of him. And then Valtteri also, did you hear Brundle? He's like, is he driving by Braille? Oh, that was rough.
I mean, we just said last year, like if Valtteri didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck at all because it doesn't seem to matter where a crash happens. It always seems to involve. It's not never, because someone will give me an example where it was his fault, but it's very rarely Valtteri's fault that causes the crash. Yeah. But then he always gets tangled up in it. It's like
Hungary was his fault. He went bowling. He took out half the grid.
Yeah. That's what I said. There will be times when it is, but that's when he had a fast car at the front. I mean, at the back, he always seems to get tangled up. If someone's going to get clipped and get a front wing broken, it's Valtteri. It just is. It's just like he's got a tractor beam that just attracts him to disaster.
The sound effect a little bit.
This is Valtteri Bottas, and you're listening to the dirty side of the track.
And I'm having bad luck because I came on that podcast. Now I got to go back on the podcast to reverse my luck.
Oh, okay. So, I didn't. There's really not a lot happened. Although we had. Max disappeared and got a second clear by the end of the first lap, so that was that.
Max gone already.
Yeah, Norris got Alonso. Piastri gets Alonso as well. I'm going to come back to this later. I want to highlight that because everyone seems to overtake Alonso today.
And
like
Charles.
the whole track seems to overtake him, yet somehow he doesn't end up last. But there we go. And we got to lap 6 when I just started knowing that it was going to be one of those days because George Russell gets told to back off a little bit to save tyres. And I'm like, oh, God, here we go. It's going to be one of those. Just Bahrain always does this to us. It's because it's the sandy surface and isn't the nice smooth surface that everyone has to go into tyre management mode. But we were kind of getting some decent battles. Perez got Charles. Charles had got some dodgy brake situation going on, which meant that he just didn't trust the car was going to stop anytime he hit the pedal. And he kind of seemed to go backwards.
I was so we didn't know it was a brake problem at first, right? And so we're watching Charles, and he's locking up once a lap, if not more. And I'm like, did he forget how to drive? Like, what happened? Is his brake bias? Like, is he playing with the settings? I actually started calling him old Chuck Lock Up Leclerc over here, and it just kept happening and happening.
Yeah.
And then we learned, of course, the car was broken. And then Sargent goes off the track also around this time. And I'm thinking, man, we may get some action here, to really make this a little spicy. With Charles got something going on with his, I don't know what, it turned out his brakes. And then Logan goes off, and you saw it very briefly on his steering wheel, said car too hot. And he's trying to get the car to start again. And he's really working on it. Like, he's not getting out, so it's not, it's not dead. Didn't explode. He's trying to basically reboot the car with his broken steering wheel. He finally gets the car going. And I'm like, that's fascinating. I'm like, okay, so, all right, I got a little something to watch here. What's going on with the this, that, the other. Then Carlos takes Charles in an amazing move on lap 11. And at this point, basically, I fell asleep for the rest of the race because, like you said, it went into, there were some other things we can highlight. Things happened, but Max was going off into the sunset.
So we had the round of pit stops, and as soon as we went onto hards, we know now it's going to be tire management mode for like the next 20, 30 laps because they've got to make the hards last. So you knew there wasn't be much going on here. But Sainz came out after his pit stop was behind Leclerc, and
Again.
Sainz took him again. And he just took him again. It was another glorious overtake, and it's like you could almost see Sainz go, bother coming over the radio saying like maintain position, hold position. He's like, no, I'm taking him. What are you gonna do? Fire me? So
You already did that.
it's like Sainz is just like got a point to prove. He's just absolutely, and I love it. I'm all here for Carlos Sainz being
too.
the number one driver at Ferrari this
I am
year.
too.
But the other thing that happened here, and it only really benefited Max because he was so far in front, was the other kind of, if the tire management of hards was a bit of a kicker, the other thing that really destroyed any strategy here is because the undercut is so powerful in Bahrain. Anybody that was still out, it didn't get spicy that you thought, oh, they're going to run this one longer and then they're going to have some pace at the end. No, anybody staying out longer is just going backwards once this all washes out because the undercut is, because Max gets a pit stop ahead, so it kind of doesn't really matter. But it just got really broke down into being a tale of Mercedes seemed to have some problems with George's car was leaking and fluid. At one point, we saw fluid come off the back and hit Carlos Sainz's visor, and he had to take a tear off. So they were in trouble with heating or whatever was going on. The Williams were overheating all over the place.
And it wasn't hot. There were people in full parkas watching this thing in the stands.
This is what I don't get.
Right.
Like, it was a cold desert.
That's not a good thing for four Mercedes power units to have heating problems, cooling problems. I guess actually would be the problem they had. They were heating just fine. It was the cooling situation.
And they screwed the pooch with whatever they did on hitting the wrong setting on Lewis's car, so that the battery wasn't charging properly.
And then his seat broke later on, which we could skip that later. It was a big mess. But at this point, Max is so far ahead. He doesn't care about the undercut. He pits and comes back out in first, and I'm like, oh my God, he's going for the Grand Slam today. And I think I predicted the Triple Crown last week. I did not think he'd have the Grand Slam because he's only had 4 in his whole life, and he's won 4,000 races. I'm like, what are the odds? Well, I'm watching this thinking, here, Grand Slam incoming. And then I'm realizing we haven't seen, outside of Logan's yellow because he had to reboot his wheel, we haven't seen a yellow or red flag. We haven't seen a VSC or a safety car. And everyone's still running, and I got to be honest, if we're in tire management and everyone's still out there, it's boring as all get out at this point for me.
Yeah, it's one of the massive downsides to the teams doing testing in Bahrain the week before the Bahrain Grand Prix, because everybody knows the track inside out, so there's kind of like no jeopardy of anybody learning the track, or everybody seems to know it. The cars can have been absolutely optimized for running on this track because they've had testing and practice and whatever. So Bahrain's always been like this, that it needs that thing to spice up. Last year really wasn't that great, but we did get a VSC that kind of did some spice to it. But if you look back at previous Bahrains, it really needed safety car to bring this back to life.
2020s were powerful. Both of them, they ran there twice. But I would say at this point we get to lap 30, about midway into the race out of the 57. Checo, just a note I made, he was in second place, but he was 15 seconds back. That's half a second a lap. So I don't know where Rob's optimism's coming in. I'm waiting over here. And
you wait.
And then Valtteri goes in for a pit stop. And in addition to bumping into Nico when Nico slammed into Lance, they decided to take 52 seconds to change the front left. They thought Monaco was fun when he was at Mercedes. Like, that looked like fun. We couldn't get the wheel off the car for you then when you were at a different team. Now that you're here, what we're going to do is have the little nut part come falling out. We're going to run around like a clown show. I waited for them to play this music as they had to,
that's harsh. That's so harsh because no one expects that nut that's part of the wheel setup to not be there. So no one's got a spare tire ready to go. And they were like, what do you mean the wheel's broken? This thing here in the middle.
But that's what it looks like when they're trying to fix it. 52 seconds was still great, but dang, that was bad.
And then we kind of come a little bit later, and really just something to kind of pull out was maybe Piastri's I would say Piastri looks like he's getting on top of his tyre management issues. Like last year, he just didn't seem to be able to stick with Lando when it was a tyre management situation because he hadn't got that part of his racecraft. This one race, the evidence points that actually he's doing that much better, but still a little bit of maybe rookieism left over where I felt that when he came out of the pits, like right behind, just right in front of Lewis, he didn't need to try to hold it into that corner because he's on fresh, cold hards. He's going to be Bambi on ice. If he just tucks in behind Lewis for that corner and goes, okay, you got me, but I'm now on fresh rubber. If I can hang out in your DRS zone, I'm going to get you back in a minute. And he doesn't. He kind of tries to defend that corner where blatantly Lewis is going to get him, and then he does slide off to the left and gives up, and then falls out of DRS and never gets back into DRS.
They interviewed him after the race on the post-race show. They had a couple interviews we'll reference. This will be one of them. And they asked him about it, and Jolyon Palmer's like, well, what, you really, it was full send. He goes, yeah. He goes, I was going for it. And he's like, did you expect to be able to hang on to the racetrack? He's like, well, I wouldn't know unless I gave it a shot. He's like, what am I going to do? Just let him go by? I'm like, well, thinking to Rob's point, yes. And then you hang on to his bumper, and then you can come back into it. But I respect the heck out of Piastri.
He's brilliant.
He's brilliant.
Yeah.
The last thing I had, really, before we get to the chaos of RB, was Sainz. And I loved this. When Checo comes out with 20 or so laps left on softs, and Sainz is a second and a half or 1.8 behind, I'm thinking Checo's tires aren't going to last. You can't make soft tires last 20 laps. And I forgot he's in a Red Bull, which was gentle on its tires, and he turned out to be fine. But Carlos is like, well, when are they going to go off? Will I have a chance? And they're like, yeah, well, soon. And then he gets back on the radio. Are they falling off yet? Am I catching up? We'll get back to you. I'm like, they're still waiting. He's still driving, or he's on his way to the airport asking about Checo's soft tires. Did they go off yet? I mean, it never happened, and it was a bummer. But I was watching that, and I realized pretty quickly it wasn't going to happen. But that was the last thing that I enjoyed until the RB chaos.
The RB chaos, where we had Yuki had been chasing down K-Mag for a number of laps, hanging out in the DRS and hanging out in a real close DRS. It was like 0.3, 0.4, like consistently. And, Danny did look faster. Just the timing from the RB, Toro Rosso. I can't call him RB. The timing for the Toro Rosso team, like he's in the throes of almost trying to put an overtake on. They come on the radio, swap cars, and like Yuki's like, nah. I'm just about to pull the trigger on overtaking it, and he just thought. I know Yuki had been stuck behind him and hadn't got past him, and maybe he wouldn't have got him at that moment. But you've got to think that how much interference with like the thought process of Yuki, what he's trying to put an attack on, and you get that message while you're in the 0.3 seconds behind window. That seemed weird timing.
So it was losers all around, right? In my opinion, Yuki had 3 laps. He tried for 3. Maybe someone on Twitter said 5, but at least 3 laps. He was within DRS working on it. He was on older hard tires. By the way, it was fun to realize that the medium tire was such hot garbage, no one even saw one. Like, what was the point of that tire? That thing was...
You can buy them on eBay now, apparently.
Apparently. And so he's on these old hard tires chasing K-Mag for over 3 laps, at least 3 laps, where he couldn't get past him. Danny Rick's on fresher, soft tires, turning in hotter laps. And, oh, by the way, Max Verstappen is starting to steam up behind them, and they're about to get blue flags. So they had to do one of 2 things. Either make this happen, the switch happen immediately. Like where the instant they realized this, and the second they said it, they should have said it sooner, you get Danny Rick through, and you see if you can get him ahead of K-Mag. Because you're about to get blue flags. Or you ignore it, and you just leave it as it is, and you hope you can get by before Max gets there. And so those are your options. What they did was they gave the call, whether they could have done it sooner or not, well, to be determined. But then Yuki hung out too long and argued for a lap or 2, and it was all done for everybody by that point. So they were all losers. Like, I see Yuki's point. He's working on an overtake over there, and they tell him to back out. That's ridiculous. I see Daniel's point. I'm on faster tires. I might be able to get past him. I see the team's point. Like, we should invert the cars because that's the right strategy call to do. And then Max rocked up and blue flagged everybody and made sure there were big gaps between everyone, and it didn't matter anyway. So, like, I just thought it was a bad situation. Losers all around. But then the checkered flag falls.
Well, just before the checkered flag, before you get into this, you say that, right? But Danny then doesn't do himself any favours. He recovers the gap that he's lost because of the blue flagging pretty quickly. I think it's only a lap that he's then within DRS. What does he do? He just hangs out in K-Mag's DRS for the rest of the race.
His tires had gone off by that point. You waited too long.
I don't think. I mean, you'd only been out on them for... No, I think think that Haas, and we'll come to the accounts of each team, but I think the Haas has sorted out its tyre problem. With its tyre problem sorted, I think its pace
I think
is
the
much
Haas
better.
are one of two teams who left Bahrain happy, but we're about to get there. I just want to talk about this real fast.
Anyway, you two, after the checkered flag, because this was amazing.
And I saw a clip of this online right away, and I didn't even know it was after the checkered flag till I reread the comments. Yuki dive bombs Danny Rick, cuts him off on the inside, and cuts him off so aggressively he locks up. This is after the checkered flag. He's going so fast and cuts off Danny Rick on the inside of a corner. He locks up, goes right across his nose, and then he recovers and almost hits Danny Rick as he drives by him because Ricardo's just driving down the racetrack. Yeah. Yuki, in his fury of being locking up, and he goes, "Oh, wow, I'm going to pass him anyway." I mean, inches from hitting him under the checkered flag. And Will Buxton said it was nearly and I don't know the driver. I'm sorry, I should know this. Danny Ticktum, is that the guy's name? In 2015, hit someone under I don't know.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah. Hit somebody under a yellow flag or under a safety car. I'm like, I don't know. All I know is I saw this, and if I'm Red Bull, there is no chance he gets a shot at that seat after that. You cannot act like that. That is beyond.
And he's not a rookie.
He's not. It's his third or fourth year. I can't even count at this point. And it's after the checkered flag. Like, if you're racing your teammate hard, that's one thing. You're not racing anymore. You jeopardized both cars for no reason.
And can you imagine if there'd been contact?
Oh, well, there almost was. That's my point.
I think Liam Lawson might have been in for Saudi.
He might be in for Saudi now. Like, you have to look at it and say, at the end of the day, what is the upside? I know he's Japanese, and I know Honda's on the side of the car, but what is the upside with Yuki at RB or Toro Rosso at this point? Is he going to be a world champion one day? I don't think you can say yes anymore. And so now he's just holding on to a seat. And so if I'm Yuki, I think I'm in real trouble for a seat next year. But that's me.
So the upshot of all of that is we watched a podium shape, which was exactly predicted by Mr. Vale 1 week ago. So I went back just to double check. Now, Brian, fair play to Brian. He got 2 out of 3 in the right order. So he said Max, followed by Charles, followed by Carlos. So he got 1 and 3 step on the podium, correct? I said I saw a repeat of the Red Bull 1-2 and that Carlo would be the best of the rest. And yeah, like
you nailed it.
Totally nailed that.
Yeah, and I called Max's triple. Yes. I thought he'd get the triple.
Did he?
I can't think
did
of
he
the name
get the Grand Slam or not? Who got fastest lap?
He did. He got the Grand Slam.
Oh, I did. I just missed the fastest lap at the end, so I wasn't. Nice.
No, he got it earlier than that. He actually went 2 seconds faster than anybody else in the middle of his stint on his last set of tires. He just when he had clear air,
when he just swapped over to the softs. He got you. Okay, cool. So then, rest of the points: Leclerc in 4th, Russell, Norris, Piastri, Alonso, and Stroll taking the last point there. And then we had shout out to Zhou for bringing in 11th.
Yes.
I thought there, and K-Mag. I think. We'll get there in a minute. Actually, K-Mag, Danny Rick, Tsunoda, Albon, Hulk, Ocon, Gasly, Bottas and Sargent, and I would say that Alpine gets super lucky to not finish last because the cars that finish behind them only finish behind them because of damage and issues, nothing to do with pace.
Exactly. I mean, Valtteri's still in the pit stop waiting for his front left wheel nut to come back around, and Logan's somewhere out there with the blue screen of death on his steering wheel, like doing a reboot. Oh, so Rob, you wanna do, or how do you want to do these thoughts on teams? You want to do that now?
Yeah. Do you want to do my stupidly optimistic? Yeah. Let's do the homework on the teams. Let's do homework on the teams first. So, Red Bull.
Oh, if you took away the Christian Horndog drama right now, I think they would be the happiest people in the world. And all there is just a little question what's going on with the team in terms of on-track performance. How does it get any better? It doesn't get any better.
Exactly. They had perfect weekend. They had no drama. Yes, we had some gremlins, maybe either in practice or quali when they were worried about upshift issues. But other than that, nothing. No tire issues.
Maybe they'd like
heating.
Checo to be a little closer. 22.5 seconds is really far behind your teammate in the same car, unless there's something I don't understand going on there. Last year, it was a 12-second delta from Max to Checo. This year, it's almost twice as much, which is why I'm twice as less happy. Is that a thing? Half as happy is the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
So basically, A+, if we're giving it the school report, it's A+ for Red Bull this weekend. Let me get Ferrari next. Ferrari, I actually think, can leave feeling pretty happy.
Yep.
because I think they know that the pace in a one lap was there because Charles had the Q2 faster than Paul. The race pace was pretty much there on a track which does not play into their strengths because it's all about rear degradation, and they've always struggled with the rear end of the car.
And they're doing better this year than last year.
And doing better than last year. And they've gone and got a 3 and a 4, even though Leclerc was nursing. What did I hear the stat? His left brake to his right brake, 100 degrees different, and it should be basically the same.
Yeah.
So they did something. They either just pure fluke where the composition of that brake disc just caused issues, or I heard the phrase glazed the disc on the way to the grid, maybe. I don't know what that means. It sounds to me like he did something in a bakery if he glazed the disc. But anyway, so you've got some gremlins that were going on there, and they still come away with 3 and 4. So
I think they feel good, but I think they could have done better. Like you don't want to see Charles having to do that through the whole race. And also, I'd like to know where they're at teammate-wise. Like Carlos, and they raced each other hard, and not every set of teammates can live with that. So I'm curious.
No, it'll be an interesting one to watch.
Yeah.
But I would still give them a B plus for.
Yeah.
I think it was a positive for Ferrari this weekend.
I'll give them a B minus because of the Charles problems. But okay.
No, agree. What I mean is, I think they can come out of it with a sense of optimism because they can say, look, Charles could have probably even been better if he hadn't been hit by that random brake issue. So
correct, but at the same time, wouldn't you rather have not had to be optimistic when you've just
but some things, unless we find out it was a Ferrari screw up where there was an old brake pad that they accidentally put on the car. If this is just one of those, like say, manufacturing glitch, If it's just like manufacturing glitch, then I think you just have to roll with the punches sometimes and go, it was out of our control. What can you do about it? But
all right, so Mercedes. I think Mercedes is less optimistic than you may say they're going to be. They couldn't keep their cars cool in the coolest day in the history of Bahrain's desert. They were both overheating. Lewis's car seat fell apart. His battery didn't work. Their customer cars were literally, the dashboard just screams car too hot on the Williams. They finally got rid of the wish.com thing, and they go for an actual screen, and they made the warnings too big.
We're reviewing Mercedes.
Well, Mercedes gave them these power units, and they stink. And
Didn't
so,
give them the steering wheel, though.
True. Whomever decided the size of the warning font needs to be fired. But so, man, I don't think Mercedes is super happy here. They did all right. I mean, but they really were lifting and coasting pretty early.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
It's going to be hotter in Jeddah in a week's time, too.
It'd be interesting to understand what that heating... I mean, let's have a look at this, right? So they've still come away with 5th with Russell, and Hamilton was down in... Where was he? Because I managed to miss him off my list there.
Lower.
I'm missing a driver, aren't I? He was in the points, wasn't he?
He was 7th, I believe.
7th, okay. So, looking back on last year to this year, does the car look racier? Does it look to have more pace? Yes. They're not starting the year with a concept that doesn't work. Did George have issues with the fluid leaking and the seat? And so again, maybe dealt some cruel blows of fate that not everything came together. We said Red Bull had the perfect weekend. Mercedes definitely didn't. And without having the perfect weekend, they've kind of sat either side of the McLarens, right? They've got Russell just ahead of them and Hamilton just
clearly
behind
the Ferraris, though.
Clearly behind the Ferraris. So I don't know. I don't know.
Mercedes doesn't race for 3rd.
No, I know, but given where they're coming from, they can't suddenly expect to be up the front. If you think about expectations of what they want to come into this season for, I'd say they'd probably come away sort of okay, thinking if we can sort the cooling. Let's say the cooling is something they understand and it's easy to control, and they just screwed the pooch this week by getting it wrong, and they'll get a better wrench to tighten Lewis's seat and sort out Russell's fluids in his sweaty visor. They probably can take the fight a little bit more to Ferrari, but I'm not sure they're coming away that happy.
They're
C minus
racing for 3rd. Yeah, agreed. And I would actually give the same to McLaren. McLaren had this massive trajectory. I forget their preseason testing. They had this massive trajectory last year, and they basically tied Mercedes. Right? We had Noah's Ark. Right? We had 2 Red Bulls. We had 2 Ferraris. We had a little split here, and then we had the 2 Astons. And so here was the split. They tied. They went every other one. It was, the conversation between George and Lando and Russell, Lewis, and then Oscar. And McLaren, I think, had higher expectations than this. I don't think it was bad. I'm not giving them I'm giving them a B minus or C plus at best, because I think they were more used to seeing podiums at the end of last year. They didn't even sniff
No,
it
I
this
agree,
time.
but you and I spoke about this, right? you can't if you put all of your expectations on how last season ended. I think everybody across the grid probably gets wildly underwhelmed by yesterday's race, because Zach had come out and kind of said, look, we're nowhere near as bad as we were last year when we got completely the wrong direction, but we've got some parts that we haven't finished and they're not quite where we want to be. So we're going to start strong, but we believe that we're going to get racier very quickly. So they think they're going to get some upgrades fairly soon. So with that being said, they've basically sat where they would have like snapped your arm off last year to finish where they finished today. Like last year, Lando's still filling up his hydraulics from last year, right? It was terrible. So year on year increase, if you're saying year-on-year increase, we want to show that we've made progress. And if they can get the same trajectory as they go on through the year, then I think they very easily come into the conversation of being second, but we don't know enough yet. So I'm with you, C+, something like that. I think they'll be happy. I think they'll be cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, we'll see. And then Aston Martin behind them, I think they have to be disappointed.
Yes.
I was calling this I had 2 calls from the beginning of the year that I got right. This was one of them. I did not expect Aston Martin to show particularly well. I thought they'd be last of the top teams, and they are. And
quite a bit adrift, actually.
Yes.
Everyone else is kind of fairly bunched. And I need to go and find the. Actually, you talk about your disappointment in Aston. I'll get the timing difference up.
So for me, I actually think one of the drivers of the day, and I'm not going to give him my king of the pits, but Lance Stroll, who was facing backwards at the end of turn 1, ended up finishing right behind, well, not quite right behind, but nearly behind Fernando Alonso, 1 spot behind him. And so they're both in the points. They got to be proud of that. They are clearly better than the teams behind them, but they're clearly not as good as the teams ahead of them. And so to me, I think they, from the run of podiums they started with last year, they got rid of the downgrades. They kind of improved a little towards the end of the season. And I disagree with you, Rob. I think you do look to where the things were at the end of last year. I think there's more teams unhappy than happy at this point, and I don't know how that happened. I would expect half to be happy and half to be unhappy. But to me, I think you got a lot of teams who are really disappointed after Bahrain. I'd give them a C, flat C for Aston Martin. Maybe
Aston Martin, I'd give them a D. I think they were awful.
Yeah,
I think you've got the gaps from, say, like Perez to Sainz to Leclerc to Russell to Norris to Hamilton to Piastri could all see each other.
Yeah.
Where if they might be towards the opposite end of a straight apart. Like I think Piastri was 6 seconds down on Hamilton, but that was like one of the biggest gaps there. Hamilton was 2 behind Norris. Norris was 2 behind Russell. Russell was 7 behind Leclerc, and then he was 12 behind Sainz. So you got some, but Alonso was 20 seconds back basically from Piastri. Yeah. That's a big chunk of change. So yeah, I don't think Aston are going to be happy at all.
And then just the teams in the midfield and the battle behind them. I'd like to do these. Like I think there were 2 good ones. I think Haas and Sauber have to be optimistic because Joe's pace 100%. Was nice.
Yes.
And K-Mag's pace was nice. And Nico still knows how to qualify. Valtteri had bad luck.
More than that.
Yeah.
I was going to say bad luck because Joe and K-Mag showed what the race pace of those cars can be. Bottas and Hulk both got caught up in incidents.
Correct.
And
Hulk, he was in Q3.
Yeah. I cautiously optimistic in Haas that maybe if they've sorted these tire degradation issues out,
I think both pace. Of those teams are in the B category for what they've been dealt and the cars they have and where they've been. I think both teams have to say, you know what, we have brighter days in front of us. This is going to be good.
I think both of those can be looking towards Jeddah and thinking points are up for grabs here.
I think Williams, hold on to RB for a minute, please, Toro Rosso, because I want to go all in because you know where I've been. I think Williams kind of got what they got. Like, they're probably a little disappointed because of the trajectory of last year, but not as bad as it was looking in practice. It was like,
maybe. They came here and got a point last year.
I know.
Alex finished 10th and
Val's first year with the whole team in the car, and it was supposed to be better.
Yeah, I think they leave pretty disappointed. I think Williams would have been hoping to be finishing ahead of Sauber and Haas.
And Alpine have to be embarrassed? I don't know what.
Yeah.
And I feel bad. Like, it was so bad, and to your point, they would have been dead last if not for bad luck for Nico Hülkenberg and Valtteri. I feel bad for not the drivers, the team. Everyone busting their butt at Alpine to make this car, and they're working so hard, and it turns out not to be great, and now you got to double down, and we just found out that their technical director and their head of aerodynamics have resigned. This ship be sinking. And Bruno Famine is out there, look, we are Alpine, and I am in charge now, and it is all great. Well, suck it, man. You guys shouldn't have fired Otmar. Sorry. I like Otmar too much.
Right? Do you want to dissect?
Oh God, not really. What
And
happened?
this, I think, this might well be the difference between why you are so down on this weekend
You
and I
think it's
am
all
less down
RB?
on it.
I just described all
Because
these teams who were terrible.
I know, but last week when we
Yeah.
made the predictions and you went with
Oh.
your heart and you thought Danny Rick was going to be fourth because I think to quote, you're all in on RB and you're going to go and buy some merch. You were so riding the RB Kool-Aid that I think it was a massive disappointment where these two finished. So over to you.
I actually would. So before whatever your optimism is, I'll just say this: when Max 22 seconds over his teammate is twice as bad as last year, and we saw what they did last year. This the Red Bull has race pace that we didn't understand last year, and it may be an interesting set of qualities, but I'm worried. And yes, RB. Thank God they couldn't get their act together and sell any merch, so I didn't buy any. I looked. I searched Amazon. I searched their website. I couldn't find anywhere to buy some Toro Rosso merch. I wanted it badly. I had money that I was ready to light on fire, and they wouldn't take it from me. Thank God they didn't, because now I don't have to buy any of this crap. And so I'm watching this team, and I'm like, oh, they're going to be good. It's the RB19 as their car this year. It's going to be awesome. And there they are, tootling around in the 14th and 13th. And I'm like, what happened? What happened? And even last year's AlphaTauri, at the end of the season, looked frisky. And remember Danny Rick in Mexico, and he's having fun, and I don't think that was a finger-gun one, maybe, I can't remember. And they're like doing their thing, and Liam Lawson made that car, brought it into the points, and you're like, yeah, this team's on the rise. And then this happened. I have to hope, let me just say this, I'm not fully done with RB. I still love you. I still love you, Toro Rosso. You have a spot in my heart, but let's hope it was track specific and something about the track didn't suit their car. And I'm so hoping for next week. Please, dear F1 gods, make it better.
Okay, so are you ready for my ridiculous optimism?
Yes, otherwise we are America's leading pickleball podcast next week.
Okay, so in a section I'm now calling Vale's Ridiculously Overly Optimistic Musings, or Vroom. I'm sure that's going to stay around. Yeah, I worked on that pun for a while. Okay, so you said
terrible.
Verstappen, yeah, I know. Verstappen was 22 seconds clear this race, and last year he was 11, so he's doubled the lead over the field.
Yeah, 12 to 22 and a half, yes.
Or so you might think. So, yes, he only beat Checo by 11 seconds last year, but he beat Fernando Alonso in third by 38.6 seconds, nearly 40 seconds clear. So the RBs were well clear, okay, ridiculously clear. Ahead of the Ferraris by, who was he was 48 seconds back, was Carlos Sainz, okay? So last year, easy Red Bull 1-2, Max beats Checo by 11, everyone else is basically almost lapped. This year, Max indeed wins by 22 seconds over Checo. Okay, cool. Carlos Sainz in third is 25 seconds behind, a 13-second performance improvement on last year's Bahrain result. And last year had a VSC in the middle that actually slowed the whole thing down, so Max probably couldn't have built a bigger lead. So, what we're looking at here, in my massively overly optimistic piece, is that Checo was actually being caught by Sainz. Not enough, the tyres didn't go off, but it was like, whatever it was, 3 seconds. Last year, it was double digits behind. So if I look at first to second, everyone's going to say Max is driving off into the distance. He's even more dominant this year. No, the pack have caught up by 13 seconds, and Checo is now the one at risk that is falling further behind his teammate. So my massive over optimistic view here is Bahrain 24 versus Bahrain 23 was less of a dominant performance by Red Bull because the pack have closed in by 13 seconds.
I appreciate that. I do appreciate you, Robert. You brought some optimism today. I'm not ready to cancel the podcast just yet. But can I just
no pickleball.
No pickleball. Can I just say one thing though?
Yeah, go for it.
It's a new concept, the RB20. It is a brand new car to them. It's not like they just tweaked last year's car. This is a whole new deal.
So?
So there's so much to wring out of it. There's juice to be squeezed.
Well, no,
Hold on, I'm still talking over here.
Be.
Pessimistic Joe is going. And so there's juice to be squeezed. They will make improvements. Will Buxton, I was asleep in front of the television and I put on practice one night, and he said by the 6th or 7th race, they will bring massive upgrades to the RB20, potentially even going to a full zero pod. He said he didn't know how they would do that because of he saw in the pods and in the side pods, and there's a lot of stuff in there. He doesn't know if that'll be true or not, but he knows they have upgrades planned. I think this is just the beginning of the Death Star, and it's turning its phasers on us, and they're going to figure it out, and we are going to be
I don't think so.
hosed.
I don't think so.
Okay,
13 seconds closer than this time last year is a huge leap forward by the rest of the grid.
I agree.
So,
I like
and
that.
we're going to, because of the way the calendar has been rejiggled around this year, we're actually going to see more examples of different types of circuits of different strengths of different cars. So I think you're probably right. By about whenever we get to Japan, which is really quick this year, what is it, 4 or 5 maybe in the calendar? We're going to have gone to ones that favour high downforce, the high-speed tracks, the whole 9 yards. We'll have seen everything. So if Red Bull are massively clear, fine. This optimism was misplaced. But I actually think just on one race and one flashback to last year's stats, that Checo's in trouble for being second in the Drivers' Championship this year.
Okay. We should move on, but I just want to say just something I've learned. A year ago, I thought people would catch up to Red Bull before the new regs, and I said we'd have a battle for the Constructors' Championship. I didn't say Drivers, if you remember. I thought Max.
Yep.
But I said Constructors' Championship before the 26 regs come in. And you said, no, Max, the Red Bull are unstoppable, untouchable. And now we are playing a little bit this is more micro than macro, I understand that. But in today's conversation, we flipped a little bit. And
no, they're still going to win the constructors by a mile because Max by himself will win it.
Okay.
But what I mean is that I actually think Checo's not nailed on for number 2 this year. So I don't see the grid can make that big a leap to catch Max in 1 year. But I stand by, a 13-second difference from the Delta this year. It'd be interesting to see if they start picking away at Checo. I just don't, unless Max gets the non-perfect weekend with some gremlins creeping in.
Let's do King of the Pits in the pits because I want to hear from Paul, and I have not heard his review. You go first. I went first on our predictions, so you go first. Who was your king and who was your pits?
My King of the Pits, I think it would be remiss of me not to start with him because we probably won't want to give it to him every single week as he dominates. I just got to say Max. Brilliant weekend.
I agree. I'm just going to say I agree. He was flawless all weekend.
Yep. Absolutely. Pits. Oh, man. Based on something you just said earlier, I was kind of leaning this way, and your comment has kind of cemented it, as I'm giving the pits to the Alpine team just because maybe even Alpine management, because just the team deserve better than this. It looks like they're going to be in for a long, old season of disappointment.
I would agree. Same thing. I would like to give an honorable mention to Lance. Like I said before, turned around on the first lap, finished 10th in the point, got a point right behind Fernando. That's a heck of a recovery drive from Lance. So I would give, you know what? Yep. And I'm going to give an honorable mention on the pits to Yuki for his giant freak out after the checker flag came down. There's no other way to say it. That was embarrassing for him as a person, for the team, and it's rare I get on a soapbox about someone acting like an idiot. This is the time.
Well, let's calm yourself down. Let's hear the Pitlane Paul music and then get into his review, shall we?
Yeah, we always want to say that, at the end. And then I want to flip over here, and I got Paul right here.
Hey now, the first official Hey No of the season and the first official race done of the season. How was it for you guys? I am going to sit on the fence and say that I was not blown away. I think the problem is it's really easy to look at Max winning by 22 seconds over his teammate and assume that everything's bad in the world. But, the reality, the first few laps, the car's sort of jostling for position where they're actually probably fastest was good, Ferrari's getting in, with Carlos getting in position over Charles, and then, look, realistically, let's take Max out of the equation. I always think it's sensible to do that because why wouldn't you? Then you have Sergio winning the race by just over or just under 3 seconds, followed by Charles, who was 14 seconds behind, followed by Leclerc, who was 9 seconds, Norris 2 seconds, Hamilton 2 seconds, Piastri 6 seconds. So, Well, I think what I'm trying to say is actually take Max out of the equation, and it can be relatively close with the rest of the field, which is, I guess, encouraging if you're more interested in who finishes second in the World Championship, because I would say pretty much we know who wins it after the first race. So let's break down the weekend. No technical issues, no retirements, no crashes. That's what you get for testing for a few days in Bahrain first, I guess, where there's no real, you know your track limits, you know everything that goes with it. So, yeah, it was just sort of like, it was a good opener. Again, Friday there, nothing really too much to shout about. It was actually quite cold on Friday and Saturday nights in terms of the weather you would expect from the Middle East. So, you know, it was proper, you know, jackets on, and it was actually bizarrely quite chilly. So, and then, yeah, qualifying, did we learn anything in qualifying? You know, I was surprised Lewis was so far down, if I'm being honest. And after the Friday, that Merc looked okay. It looked like it was a good car. But, you know, again, that's the issue with Fridays. They can quite easily blind you into thinking something's a lot better than it actually is. Pushing on to the race, yeah, I think we've sort of covered that really. From our side, with Valtteri, we had the turn one incident. He had a great start. Him and Joe had both great starts in that black and green car. And then, yeah, we just got snarled up at turn one. That can happen, unfortunately, when you're starting that far back. But then front wing damage, and I think probably the second longest pit stop in F1 history, which is ironic because the first one was also Valtteri. But that, again, no blame on the crew. That can happen. It is something we got to build on for next race, because actually the pace was okay from us, really.
It looked good.
Stuck in a DRS train. I'm not going to change my stance on DRS trains as we get into the new season. I'm still going to have as much dislike for them. And that's about it. It was bizarre having it on a Saturday. You know, you spend your life thinking it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it's not. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So that was confusing. And apart from that, it was a pretty dull week of F1. Not really a lot happening in the news. Not really a lot happening in and around the paddock. So yeah, I guess that's this until Saudi Arabia, where you know, you're allowed to have as many wives as you like, I guess. So over and out. Bye bye.
Paul, thank you so much. That was excellent. So you and Paul both optimists for the battle.
I was going to say, actually, and I'll be honest, I didn't listen to his. I saw the thing come through, but I didn't listen to it ahead. But we've had a number of things that we share there. So, yeah, I think there is reason to be cautiously optimistic. But before we let's not go back over that, because we've already done it. I know you went to town on some. We got Sap Stats fantasy update, and look forward to Jeddah before we ran the week out.
Let's do it. I'm going with the Nokia.
It's a classic.
Sap Stats, Bahrain kickoff of 2024 edition. And I'm stealing these from Sean Kelly because it's been a busy weekend. So full credit to Mr. Kelly, who's about to be a friend of the pod one day. He'd offered at the end of last year, and we couldn't make the timing work. So
say we couldn't make the timing work. Anyway, yeah, okay, better.
For the first time in F1 history, every car that took the start in the season's first race also took the checkered flag. So yes, everyone's referenced it, but it was the first time we've had every car finish. Red Bull began their 20th season in F1 with their 114th race victory, which, as you heard Crofty say on the telecast, ties Williams for fourth all-time. Williams is quite a lot longer history. Verstappen won his 8th consecutive race, because the calendar change doesn't mean the history of the races before does. 8 in a row. This weekend, Verstappen took a Grand Slam for the 5th time in his career. We referenced this before. Ties Ascari and Schumacher's career totals, which is 3rd all-time, behind Lewis Hamilton's 6 Grand Slams and Jim Clark's 8. Jim Clark, by the way, was voted our best driver of all time in last year's February F1 Fantasticness bracket. We should talk about that. We have the bracket finish as well, so we can kind of get into that. Verstappen's the first driver to score a Grand Slam in the opening race of the season since Schumacher in 2004. Today was Verstappen's 42nd consecutive classified finish. I love this stat because it's the second longest streak in history behind Lewis Hamilton's 48. So 42 races in a row he's been classified, which is tremendous. Shows the reliability in addition to the talent. Perez's P2 was his best finish since the Italian Grand Prix 9 races ago last year. Carlos was P3. It was his 4th podium finish since the beginning of last season. Charles in P4 gave the Ferrari 12 points, and he only scored 6 total points in the opening 3 races of 23, so much better start for Mr. Lockup himself, Charles Leclerc. George Russell in P5, Lewis Hamilton, as I said, in P7. Mercedes scored an identical result to Bahrain 23, but they swapped the drivers around. It was Lewis in 5th and George in 7th last year. Lando 6th and Oscar 8th. As I said, we intertwined the McLaren and Mercedes drivers. McLaren scored in the season's opening race for the first time since 21. Piastri had as many points in this race as he did in the first 5 races of 23, so you'll see Charles, Oscar having better starts to the year. Hamilton's P7, though, was his worst Bahrain result since the turbo hybrid era began in 14. Fernando in P9 and Lance in P10. Aston Martin scored with both cars in Bahrain for the 2nd consecutive year. That closes that race, and I did not enjoy it, and I can't wait for the next one.
Well, it doesn't close the race because you're going to have to give the fantasy update.
Well, fantasy is
all
really
about that race.
I guess it is. And interestingly, I'm excited for this because Andy Tails, as he is on Twitter, tied for first with Sen Gaucho F1. And Andy is a friend of the pod. He's part of the Discord. You've heard him before. But Manuel Lopez in first. And I'm not going to do names because I know a lot of people don't like the names. So sorry, I'll stop doing that. But they both had 239 points. Great job by Sen Gaucho and by Tails I Win. So great job by those two. Followed by Kimi Hakkinen, Real Karuna. I got to learn all these new names again. La Second Esquadra, Merkstappen, Sap at Dirty Side, TMV Racing Reloaded, at Yank the Mic, and Potenza Racing Team. I don't know if you guys caught it, but in 6th place there was a guy named at Sap at Dirty Side. Did you catch that, Rob?
Is that your team name?
Yeah. And so,
oh my gosh.
Well, it's better. It may not be as good a team name as yours, George's Sweaty Visor, but I wasn't 32nd either.
I was pretty happy. I was only like 40 points off you. I thought I was going to have a stinker once. My faith in RB. I got to punt them, I think, pretty soon.
The prices adjusted, and they went down. So,
yeah.
Not a surprise there.
Oh, yeah. Well, onwards and upwards to the next one. That's what I say. But where are we then? Where are we right now? We've done fantasy. We've done the thing. It's next race time. Or do you want to just quickly hit the bracket before we go into
I'll just say
week?
the final 4 and the winner. So the final 4 tracks that made it through our bracket, hashtag February F1 Fantasticness. And thank you all for voting. We had Spa. We had Interlagos. We had Monza. And we had Silverstone. And the final was Silverstone versus Spa, and Spa on Twitter eked it out barely. We had hundreds of votes, 51.6 for Spa. It was super, super close.
And Threads was exactly the same result, but a little bit more. I think it was more like 60-40 for Spa. I was actually shocked. I honestly thought Silverstone was going to take it.
I did too.
Yeah, the love for Spa was strong. So yeah, awesome. Thank you. Like Brian said, thanks to everyone who voted. It was good. It was good fun. And talking of good fun, hopefully next week is going to be a lot more fun. Watching the race at Jeddah. It'll be the 4th time we've been to Jeddah. It's the night race. It's 3.836 miles long, 50 laps. 27 corners. I had to double check that because I was like, it can't be 27
There's so many
corners.
small corners that are high speed, full speed corners, right? Though.
Yeah. So if we flash back to last year, this is the one where Perez came to the party and made it look like we might have a battle for the championship between him and Max because he locked out, took pole and took the win. They got their second 1-2 of the season. So it was Checo from Max. Max had bad quali because he had the drive shaft failure. So I think he started in 15th. So yeah, probably would have won it if he just started from the front, but he didn't. So Checo took it. Yep. Alonso made it 2 out of 2 third steps on the podium. Then we had George and Lewis I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Fourth and fifth, and then the Ferrari pair of Carlos and Charles. And then to keep the pairs going, we had Ocon and Gasly. That's not happening again. And
There
K-Mag
could be
rounded out the
14
points.
retirements. You don't know.
Yeah, maybe. So we've only had it 3 times so far. Mercedes have won it once, Red Bull have won it twice, which means and because of the order of the winners there, we've had 0 repeat winners so far. Lewis won 21, Max won 22, Sergio won 23. Probably going to have a repeat winner coming next week, I think. But talking of that, we've got to lock in our predictions.
You have to go first this time, because we really don't think of this in advance. It always somehow catches Rob and I by surprise. At the end of the podcast, we have to make this prediction. You should see, since we don't do the YouTube videos, you should see our faces. We're both like this, like, what? We have to make a prediction now? That was me vamping for a minute, so I at least have some thoughts. Rob, you go first.
Oh, thanks. So, I'm not going to bet against Max. I don't think drive shaft problems happen this time around, so I think he'll probably roll on through and take another victory. But being as I went for the stupidly over-optimistic thing a few minutes ago about how the pack is catching Red Bull, I'm going to invert the 2 and the 3 steps, and I'm going to say Carlos from Checo.
Interesting.
What say thee?
I like that a bit, especially because, and again, I know they're new cars, but you saw what Ferrari did at Monza last year, and they were real tight with the Red Bull's high-speed track. That's what this is for everyone who may be newer. Jeddah is a very, 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 very high-speed track, but it has walls around it, and is, I guess, technically a street circuit of sorts. Max, clearly. Like, if I said anything other than Max, you should just reach through the Zoom and punch me in the face. I got Danny Rick, and then you... No, I'm just kidding. I got the RBs, baby! No, I don't. I have Max, I have Checo, and I have Charles. I think Charles, a bounce back for him. I think the team knows he's their future, and I think they will do what they can to help him get on this podium. And I think Ferrari, and again, that's why I'm curious to see high speed. Like, it's a higher speed circuit than Bahrain. How much will that matter? The tarmac is much more tire friendly. So I'm curious to see how this all happens and comes down. But yeah, I got Max. I'm keeping Checo on that second step because I think that RB20 is a machine that is already should be feared and just getting better. And then I got my man Charles Leclerc, Mr. Lockup himself, finishing third.
Yeah, I mean, I debated about putting Checo up on second because he is good at the street tracks, but he's in this car that he was clear by second from third last year by in the double digits of seconds, and this year was being hunted down if it wasn't.
He had a bad
for
quali
tire
though.
choice.
He was like fifth or something after quali, so he had to pass people.
Yeah, maybe. I'm gonna say that he doesn't. So she'll find out next week.
Anything for you left?
No, I'm just going to go and carry on drinking the optimistic Kool-Aid.
And Rob, I appreciate you tinting my pessimism with some optimisms, and I'm ready for next week as well. I can't wait to watch the racing in Jeddah, and we can't wait to talk about it with all you guys in 1 week's time. Everyone have a wonderful week. Be well, be safe. Have a great week of watching F1.